Top of the morning to you, cattle market news. Shaylee Stewart here with your cattle market news tip sheet, and I'm so excited to be hashing and dashing the cattle market with you again this week as we look at the date on the calendar and kind of shake our heads and wonder, where did 2022 go? I think that it's so important that even with the holidays nearing, and maybe you've already marketed your feeder cattle for the year, that we stay engaged in these markets, because we don't want to be jumping into 2023 and its cattle market and wondering what's happened the last 2 months, what kind of happened at the year's end. Where do we sit? Where do we stand? Stay engaged in these markets because they change so quick. You can't afford to be playing catch up when you need to make decisions. So we're going to hash out the details of last week's market. We're going to, of course, talk about the futures complex. We're going to talk about the cash cattle market, box beef trends, imports, exports, and that feeder cattle market. But I have a few notes in which I want to share with you at the top of this report that I'm so excited to share. And the first of that is that I am so excited to tell you that today the Cattleman U Profit Finder series went live today. And so I was so honored to be a part of that series and record a session with Caroline Rose and just talk about the cattle market and how it affects your bottom line and what some of the terms mean and how you can maybe use the market to seek more profits in your business, on your ranch, through your cattle sales. And so she not only had me talking about the cattle markets, but she had other folks talking about maybe some quick books tricks that you can use, some egg loans, some just simple personal growth and development series. And so nevertheless, I think it was perfectly titled the Profit Finder series, and I hope that you'll check it out. You can go and find more about the Profit Finder series at www.cattlemenulive.com/Profit Finder. So I really encourage that you do so, because man, talk about some great content put together for cattlemen, and what a great time at the end of the year when we're wanting to make changes in our business plan and in our structure. What a great time to implement those changes before we get into a new year and a new cycling system. So nevertheless, I hope that you check that out. And then I've been sharing with you week in and week out these dates. And as, like I said, we move further into 2022, it's going to be here before you know it. The first of which is the United States Cattlemen Association's 15th annual meeting, being held December 8th through the 10th in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm so excited for you guys who are going to be able to make that event. You're going to hear from phenomenal speakers such as Corbett Wall, Trey Wassenberger, Marky Hageman-Jones, and you're going to be around some of the industry's finest people with some of the finest conversation being had, and you are just going to grow and you're going to excel and you're just going to feel enriched coming out of that event. So nevertheless, if you want to join the U.S. Cattlemen Association and go to their annual meeting, go to www.uscattlemen.org, and then right after the USCA's annual meeting, come join us. DTN is going to virtually host their Egg Summit event this year, and that is going to be on December 12th and 13th, and I'm so excited to be giving you a recap on that summit, and that'll be on Tuesday the 13th, and we're going to talk about what happened throughout the entire year of 2022. We're going to forecast a little about what could potentially be coming down the pike for 2023, and we're just going to spend a large chunk of time just talking about the cattle market, what happened, what transpired, and what could lay ahead. And so if you want to find out more about that event, go to www.dtn.com/Egg Summit. So without further ado, let's talk about last week's cattle market. Starting at the top of the report, as we always do, with your Friday to Friday livestock contract changes. Throughout the week last week, December live cattle fell $1.35. February live cattle fell $1.95. November feeder cattle fell 5 cents, and January feeder cattle fell 75 cents. Throughout the week, December corn traded steady, and throughout the week, March corn traded steady as well. Let's dive on into that cash cattle trade, because I've got a little bit of a question to pose you with. And so let me just tell you what the market did, and then let me ask you a question, and I want you to think on it. So last week, the market did good in the sheer fact that it pretty much waited until Thursday to trade cattle. There was a little bit of trade that transpired Wednesday afternoon, but largely most of last week's trade happened on Thursday. In the Southern Plains, live cattle traded for $1.50, which was considered fully steady with the week before. But in the Northern Plains, northern cattle traded for $2.42 dress, which was considered $2 higher than the week before. Last week's volume of negotiated cash cattle sales totaled 88,348 head, of which 78% were committed for the nearby delivery and 22% were committed for the deferred delivery. So let me ask you, our show lists are current. We know that supplies of market-ready cattle are going to become, larger probably around the first of the year. And so we have an opportunity in the cash cattle market right now to advance prices. So is it appropriate that the cash cattle market only traded steady to $2 higher? And I would say that it's a missed opportunity in the marketplace because, as you know, packers will love to take $2 to $4 to $5 out of the market when they're able to say, hey, we've got all the cattle we need, we're cutting prices. And so when they go to cutting prices, like I said, it can happen at $2 to $4 to $5 at a whack. And so when there's an opportunity to advance the cash cattle market, feedlots need to be poised, need to be eager, need to be fine-tuned and ready and just sharpened to do so. And so I would say with this window of opportunity, which really is only for realistically about a month left of the year, I would say push on this market as aggressively as you can. You know, with where the show lists sit right now, you know that they need cattle. They're still running aggressive slaughter speeds. We'll chat about that in just a second. But if they're going to continue to run those chain speeds as fast as they are, I'd say go ahead and maybe think about it, as each individual operation should. Think about turning down that first bid. What's the harm in waiting and saying, hey, if you're serious about buying my cattle, give me a call later in the week when you can figure some more numbers or do some more math and think about what you can actually give me. So nevertheless, that's just some good food for thought, I think, because with the show list sitting as current as they are, I think that feedlots have an opportunity to push on this market even more so. So I hope that this week's market does just that. Let's talk about some of the specifics of last week's market, though. Last week's estimated slaughter came in at 667,000 head. That is a tremendous week, you guys. That was just down 1,000 head from the week before, but up 15,000 head compared to a year ago. I promised you each and every week we were going to talk about beef cow slaughter because the U.S. cow herd is our factory of the entire cattle market. So we have to know what's happening in regards to beef cow slaughter. For the week ending October 22nd, 2022, there was 84,800 head of beef cows processed. That is exponential. That is huge, you guys. This beef cow slaughter, it hasn't weakened. It hasn't backed off whatsoever. So if you have heifers that you don't think you want to sell, maybe you just sit on them because you know the demand for them is only going to get higher in the future. Let's talk about your box beef trends. Last week, choice cuts averaged $263.74, up $2.54 throughout the week, and select cuts averaged $233.06, up $3.47 from the previous week. Last week's movement of cuts, grinds, and trim totaled 630 loads, and last week, throughout the entire week, the choice select spread averaged $30.68, which again tells you that we are thin, we are short of cattle that grade choice plus, but we have a lot of cattle that are grading select, so that tells us that they're pulling cattle ahead and that they're not spending as much time on feed because the packers need the cattle. So food for thought for that cash cattle market. Let's talk about carcass weights. For the week ending October 22nd, 2022, steers averaged 9 1/4, which was 1 pound heavier than the week before, but 7 pounds heavier than the same week a year ago. Heifers averaged 848 pounds, and that was 2 pounds heavier than the previous week and 6 pounds heavier than a year ago. A little bit of disappointing news for this import-export ratio. Last week, fresh beef imports totaled 20,070 metric tons, with Australia, Canada, and Mexico being your largest importers. Adversely, beef exports only totaled 9,200 metric tons, with Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan being your largest destinations. And last but certainly not least, let's talk about that feeder cattle market. And I'm going to break it down for you by state again. And so please remember that these are steer calf prices average throughout the entire state, so not one single sale barn. And so this is what these states did last week. Last week in Montana, steer calves weighing 486 pounds averaged $2.11. Steer calves weighing 550 pounds averaged $2.10. And steer calves weighing 675 pounds in Montana averaged $2.77. Or excuse me, averaged $1.77. Boy, that'd be a big price for you now, wouldn't it? In South Dakota last week, steer calves weighing 475 pounds, they sold for $2.33. Steer calves weighing 5 1/4 sold for $2.21, and your 670 weights they sold for $1.80. In Nebraska last week, 470 weights they sold for $2.12. 550 pound steer calves sold for $2.18, and your 675 pound steer calves they sold for $1.88. In Oklahoma last week, your 510 pound steer calves they sold for $1.95. Your 580 weights they sold for $1.75, and your 675 pound steer calves they sold for $1.71. In Missouri last week, your 4 1/4 weights they sold for $2.16. Your 528-pound steer calves, they sold for $2.05, and your 660 weights, they sold for $1.74. And last but certainly not least, in Tennessee, your 475-pound steer calves, they sold for $1.59. Your 622-pound steer calves, they sold for $1.65, and your 720 weights, they sold for $1.49. So nevertheless, it was a busy week in the market last week, and just because we were wrapping up, we're kind of transitioning into the holiday spirit, and hopefully you're remembering the reason for the season with the birth of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. But nevertheless, we have a lot going on in the markets right now, you guys, and it is no time to be hanging your hat on the wall and stepping back and tuning out of the marketplace, because let me tell you, so much is happening, and you need to stay attuned to this marketplace. So nevertheless, I hope you have a blessed week. Take care. Shaylee Stewart here with your Cattle Market News Tip Sheet. Take care, folks.